Hi, I'm the guy who said that the digital circus felt like it was trying too hard at times. And the internet collectively agreed to tell me to go duck myself, as I like hell of a boss. So clearly I have no taste, which that is true. But what's also true is that while I am a hater of many things, the amazing digital circus isn't one of them. I just didn't fully click with it as so many other people did. And by so many other people, I mean everyone else. As this show's popularity is Undertale on crack, and it is competing with all other minor drama going on in the world right now for our attention. I know my issues with DC are me things, so naturally the fact that we were given a second episode filled me with all the anxiety, as I can survive threats over Hazbin Hotel, but Digital Circus stands might actually put me in the ground. So no pressure, everything's good, everything's fine, Candy Carrier Chaos was fine. Was that sarcasm or dramatic effect? Well, bitches, bros, non-binary hoes. Let us discuss the Digital Circus Part 2 and how I actually kinda liked it. My core issues with the series still remains the same. This can only go well. You parasite! So to just go through the episode and give my thoughts, I think this thing starts off really strong. We get another happy-ish beginning that backslides into discord and something isn't right here vibes, with the show kicking off with a dream sequence of Pomni breaking mental health records by disassociating in her sleep, till the nightmare fuel kicks in and she slams face first into symbolism and Chekhov's gun. Now, to get my big first praise for DC out of the way, I think the script for this episode is super good, and this is gonna sound backhanded, because it is. This is an episode that feels like it was written like an actual episode of TV. There has been an issue I've noticed in some indie productions, and a lot, if a different problem for the professional ones as well, where a lot of the time, the plot of the individual episodes will feel like it's really just two scenes in a trench coat, trying to coast on vibes. It'll feel like a lot of meandering, lots of moments that feel like they exist just to be screen capped on Twitter with the caption cute, adorable, feels, the like, leaving the actual story that it's trying to tell to feel underbaked, lacking in setup and payoff, with us just having to assume the connective tissue because of character archetypes. With the other end of the extreme being episodes that feel like they only exist to be binged, making the individual episodes that feel like they are struggling to stand on their own and nothing happens till the second to last one. And if you know my channel, you know exactly who I'm talking about here. Digital Circus, though, does not have this problem. The plot is, for the most part, extremely tight, is that it is always doing either comedy, character moments, or planting and payoff. I think this episode really locked in to tell us what this show wants to be and what it'll be focusing on moving forward. There is a strong, self-contained story here, even if it is expanding upon what we've already seen. And not to walk back the point that I just made about these episodes standing on their own, but Candy Carrier to me feels like the premiere part 2, where we get past the setup and finally get the sense that we've reached the baseline for what the series is going to be moving forward, with the key to this being Pomni's arc, as the premiere is just her in denial and the slow realization that this is her life now, and she can't reschedule this mental breakdown any longer, which cool. Okay, but then we see Pomni here and she is still reeling from the events of yesterday, only for this whole episode to be built around her finally reaching a point of acceptance and to truly start feeling like she is a member of the digital circus, not just a passenger. And all this is accomplished both through the great writing and a lot of good visual storytelling. And this is up in a lot of great ways. We're reintroduced to her with this warping body effect, conveying the idea that she might not really view this as her true self, only for the fear of abstraction and death to take precedence before even that gives way to her real fear, nothingness.
I don't even remember her name, honestly.
I'll get into why this brings home the setting and the existential dread that I thought was just kinda happening in the premiere, but Pomni, long story short, is going through it. She's suffering from the real horror of the circus, that it's not that nothing they do matters, it's the feeling that they don't matter. Pomni has gotten a clear view of the seemingly inevitable fate of her existence, so she is of course spiraling depressed and shutting herself off as she is just processing all of this. This is a great reintroduction as it sets up so much of the conclusion and her own journey to realizing that things things, well, they're terrible, but there is an opportunity here for hope, while setting up the key ideas that'll be relevant later for her own escape. This is what I mean by the Digital Circus script being really good, as it's bringing home everything from the premiere, building off of it, and giving us a clear emotional arc, while also setting up minor ones like with Ragatha, who feels guilty about how Pomni got introduced and is trying to look after her. I appreciate how very little waste there is here, even when it's seemingly just telling jokes. That said, I still don't think the show is uproariously funny.
Sounds
Bubble, you can't say that.
A case of personal taste. I do think the show just from time to time does lean into a modern comedic cliche of letting jokes drag just a wee bit too long, with the fact that they are just becoming part of the joke, with it never really working for me. With the biggest offender of this being Kane. Great performance aside, I still don't fully fuck with. He is single-handedly leading this cast in comedic shots missed, for me, as even if he's intended to be wacky and extra, Kane is just one of those aspects of Digital Circus where I feel like I get the bit and just not doing anything for me, especially when the show's zingers and one-liners are just so consistently good that the difference in my reaction versus my lack of is even more noticeable, though I'm sure this slays other people, and that's fine.
If you knew what I did in my free time more, you'd be sickened.
As I was saying,
Mugging the camera is the best description I can use for this, though it's not a deal breaker by any means, but it's where I'm at. Moving on, we finally get a real look at the daily quest Kane sets up for the players.
our entire existence here is just LARPing.
Oh yeah. It's Infinity Train. Kane, more than just having everyone dick around in the I Spy Palace, he sends them to areas that he's custom built just for them, and I just love the hints about how Kane is just a game designer working on crunch time.
Ah, you must be the brave knight sent to us by God to help us with our recent catastrophe.
I giggle at Kane just making himself the god of these AI, that this is his in-game excuse for just why the Candy people just trust the players to go on this quest, but it slays me once I know it's just all the little ways Kane cheats and the obvious sense of priorities when it came to like building this world, as he clearly didn't give a shit about the actual Candy Town, else he wouldn't have just filled it completely with literal placeholders. You can tell that Kane just thought of this area as a place you begin the quest and end it. It does not need to be detailed, the players won't be spending a lot of time here, and that means he doesn't have to put in a bunch of lore or really create rich and deep characters. He can just slap his face on the top, say he's God, and the NPCs will give the players a truck and send them on their merry way. This world, and this town in particular, is so clearly put together with shoestring and bubblegum, and it's great because you can tell his attention was put onto other things, aka the villains, who, not given a whole lot to be honest, but they at least have a backstory, motivations, and quirks that make them just a lot more fleshed out and a lot more fun to interact with. Kane hypes up his new AI, but you couldn't tell that just by the princess in the town, whose vocals and expressions feel intentionally flat and placid, as she is just the quest giver. Hence, Kane didn't feel the need to really give her much of a personality, motivations, or anything really, as why waste time on that when it's something that the players are barely ever going to interact with, so good enough was enough. Kane only puts in as much work as necessary, even if what he creates could pass a Turing test. Kane gave Gummy the motivation of help mom steal syrup, but you get the sense that it's all just lines of code written by Kane. He just needs to give the Crocs a reason to not get caught, but didn't have the time or really just care enough to give anything more than that. He didn't think of giving the mom a face, as that would be extra work he didn't really need to do. However, the heightened intelligence of the AI makes that realization of these cracks soul-shattering once they realize, oh, I don't remember anything. All of this lazy world building is amazing world building, as it just tells us so much about Kane, his thought process, and what he views as priorities.
wait, what?
All the characters in the show are edging a mental breakdown. Kane, despite allegedly being AI, is no different, as his almost every waking moment seems to be trained on entertaining his guests, with his breaks just kind of happening. We don't know if he really gets any real rest from this. Also, I add allegedly to my AI statement about Kane, as while I'm pretty sure he's not a human, I do think it's curious that he has to invent code for his new AI, when he himself is crazy but very authentic feeling. You would think he'd be able to just take whatever code he's based on and replicate it, but he doesn't. He apparently invented this, and that could mean a couple things. He might be unable to look at his own programming, it might mean he's not AI, or he simply just can't use his, as that would just create something that could also manipulate reality, which would be a disaster for everyone. Even though there is limits to Kane's powers, with the void being unknown to even him, Kane not actually being aware of what's going on at all times. Now, he didn't know that Kaufmo abstracted. He actually has to check a watch to know that Pomni is missing. I think there are very interesting questions about Kane and the supposed parameters he works under. That he, despite not being emotionally intelligent in the slightest, what he creates can be. This could set up a potential conflict where his creations are more human-like than he is, but he's still all-powerful and constrained to act in a certain way, which could run into conflict with the desires of Pomni and the rest, who might just choose to live amongst AI rather than let Kane keep trying to entertain them in isolated one-offs. Also, it's interesting that Kane claimed he killed Gummigoo because he might get confused with who is an AI and who's not, when he actually might have a method if his seemingly inability to delete abstractions also applies to players. Or, and this is more likely, the specific nature of the abstractions means he can't fix or destroy them. But if that's true, that means he can destroy the players, at least until they go off the deep end. Or another thing, he simply is programmed to not harm the players, so while he can destroy abstractions, he isn't allowed to. Hence why he puts them in the basement instead of just putting them out of their misery. And if that's not emotionally relevant enough, he can just do it from the practical standpoint that these things can infect other parts of the system, so they are actually a threat, and it would be safer for him to get rid of them. While not around a lot, we learn a lot about Kane and get even more questions about him and his exact nature, and I really appreciate that about the world building. But to move on to that chase scene, this whole sequence is very fun.
Pomni, take this!
Digital Circus is pretty consistently great at visuals, so the gag comedy works perfectly. The Crocs have different arm sizes impeding their ability to drive, Jax's head not moving, Pomni's expressions in every shot, Kinger is just the GOAT. These are all just fun antics that I think are a delight, especially when you played over the sobs of the Jax fanboys realizing that their fave is a piece of shit.
Tommy's still on board!
Do it, it'll be epic.
Now, I like the cast for DC. They all have very specific and clear responses to their nihilistic existence. Ragatha cleans to structure and social norms, seemingly trying to care about going through the motions to keep herself sane, else she starts to unravel. Kinger just seems to only exist in the moment, teetering from panic to sage advice just with no warning. Gangle, I'm still trying to put a finger on just what their thing is besides being the team bitch who will snap and kill everyone at some point. And then we have Jax, who is just a bully, and people are not okay with it.
You did what now?
Well, love to help you again sometime. Bye!
This is one of those funny situations where people just, because he was entertaining and charismatic, he had a look, there must be a good reason or a heart of gold behind all of his terrible. People just, they love a whoopee who is tragic and lashing out, but who actually cares. But even if that's true, it doesn't really justify what he does. And this whole situation just played out so great to me. Audience I've seen have a very low tolerance for characters acting out. They don't even handle blank meme is true for a reason, as if a show doesn't frame what's happening as funny, people realize that this isn't fun and this person actually sucks to be around. Which throughout all your Jax was rewritten or changed from the premiere comments, he wasn't. The only diff between 1 and 2 is that before you were laughing with Bugs Bunny, and now you're not. Like truly, if we're being honest, what Jax does in 2 is actually less terrible than what he did in 1, as at least in 2, while he is being a bully and verbally abusing Gangle, Jax's antics don't actually put his group in danger. As yeah, they're immortal. The only way they can die is via abstraction, so them landing in knives, getting impaled, him chucking Pomni between the trucks, none of it can actually lead to permanent damage that isn't emotional. Jax knows this, so he acts accordingly, because he is a self-centered prick who prioritizes his own amusement over the emotional well-being of those around him. He lives life like he is playing GTA. But while this has been the mask-off moment for a lot of fans, I still think his actions in the premiere were worse, as he left Pomni and Ragatha to die. He also didn't warn the others about Kaufmo abstracting, then proceeded to dick around thinking that Kane will just pop in eventually and deal with it. This was the game, carried real risks, but he still abandoned the others to save his own skin. Or at least here, you know none of it has a long-lasting physical consequences. But the diff is that we're being made to sympathize with his victims rather than laughing along with him. There's no sad glances to give us the illusion that he has some deeper ulterior motive or that he's keeping the rest safe while not letting them know what's happening. He's a dick. Some of y'all assumed some nobility that clearly isn't there. He treats his friends like shit. He treats the NPCs as toys for his own amusement. And if you want a real red flag, he uses violence as a means of catharsis in a world that he can do so without consequences. He's basically an early Flowey or Simon, where only his entertainment matters even means other characters have to suffer. Jax isn't a character you're supposed to like in spite of his behavior and what he might become. He's a character you're supposed to either love or hate or enjoy just how much of a jerk he is. That's Jax. Sorry he wasn't Tumblr Man status, RIP to the ships. Though the fact that we got an actual version of this would-be ideal in Gummy it didn't help Jax's PR in the slightest.
I want you to tell me exactly what I am.
Now this section is going to be one of the highlights of the episode as we tag back into the horror of the specific situation created by this world, of an NPC realizing the point of their existence and how everything about them is a half-assed lie created by a psychotic chatterbox. And I get it, but this is also the part in the story where I tune out, and I can't explain why.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Yeah, welcome to the club, pal.
In my original review, I harped on about, and I fully made up this term, the performative existentialism of the digital circus, where even if it's visually presenting the ideas well, I felt just emotionally checked out of what was happening. This isn't my first rodeo with any of these concepts, but even then, I don't usually hit a wall like I do with DC. Like, the best analogy that I can come up with is that when we get to these moments, I personally feel like I hit a wall where I disconnect from the story, and I am just watching these events play out from a window, where I can appreciate everything that's happening, but I just don't feel it. I don't really emotionally connect with any of it. Part of me wonders if I'm just jaded that these episodes somehow consistently drop during not great times in my life, or if this is just something as simple as like, oh, I've seen it before. And when I break down what's happening here and how it's being executed, I recognize that it's really fucking good. The direction for this scene is fantastic, from how Gummy is shot, that sense of unease that builds as he finds himself off the map and discovering the assets of himself and his friends. We watch this man's world shatter before him as he realizes the truth, and it's all perfectly conveyed by the visual language of the scene. You could play this thing on mute and you would still understand almost everything that's happening. And the music, when it's there, is going off. Jack Hawkins as Gummy Goo is crushing it.
What do we have when you people leave? We're just obstacles, created to be defeated and forgotten.
I think everything about Gummy Goo discovering the backrooms and the slow realization of what he is and the despair that brings is fantastic. It is doing nothing wrong, and I'm shrugging through it. I can't explain my weird apathy for these moments of the digital circus, but this is such an integral part of the DNA of the digital circus. The fact that it feels performative kind of keeps me at arm's length from being in the overcrowded trenches for this show, and I hate that. But that said, even my cold, dead heart melted as I saw what I think is going to be the real strength of this show: building connections.
Guess I just don't want you to feel like you're nothing. I don't want anybody to feel like that.
Nothing they do matters in the digital circus. They exist, and the only real goal that they have is not to go insane, which is as counterproductive as saying, don't worry about it. But for Pomni, whose fear of being nothing, of not mattering, of having no reason to be here other than that primal urge to keep existing, recognizes Gummy is going through the same thing she is. That for her, seeing her problems in somebody else causes her to do what she has been thinking about all day and unintentionally rejecting from her friend. She reaches out. Pomni talks Gummy out of this existential nightmare, convincing him to keep moving forward and to try and build a new life. To take this big, wondrous leap of faith as they go back to everyone else, as they decide, despite everything, they want to keep on living. Even if Kane has a problem with that.
Wait, what?
Wait, what?
But it's later during Cosmo's funeral that it all just clicks for her, as she still sees that she does in fact matter, that she isn't just a guest star of this community, but a full member, that they're all suffering together and have one another to lean on and to help get through just this horrific existence. And for how little the scenes dealing with like the core existential dread of the digital circus meant to me, this fucking hit. It took what felt like a concept that I was disconnected from and grounds it in the characters. Going beyond just like, oh yeah, some character is suffering, to these people are responding and dealing with it. I think that this focus on the characters is going to be one of Digital Circus's biggest strengths. From just the premiere, it was a wee bit up in the air what kind of show DC was gonna be. If the mystery of what was going on was to become more important later down the road, or if it was just gonna be shenanigans with the occasional edge. But I think if this is the direction Digital Circus is gonna take, focusing on the characters, dark comedy and all, that yeah, we might learn more about the mysteries of the Digital Circus just later down the road, but if it's always filtered through how these revelations affect the characters, then I think this show is going to be fine. Hell, I think this show could even go down as one of the greats. I appreciate the Digital Circus. I'm still really clashing for the series for reasons that I can't fully parse out, but I'm glad most everyone else is hooked by it. Gooseworks and the rest of the Glitch team are killing it. I'm clearly the problem here. It'll be interesting to see how all this will play out, but while this review is for public consumption, I am going through my own weird journey with the Digital Circus, and I hope for the rest of y'all it's a little bit smoother sailing. I'm sure it's all gonna be a fun ride nonetheless. Also, there will be no ships in the show, the creators confirmed it, so temper your expectations for whenever the Croc Daddy returns.